Good morning, and welcome to the 37th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Scholarship Breakfast, sponsored by the Hartford Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Incorporated. My name is Joelle Murchison, and I am a proud member of the Hartford Alumni Chapter and the Martin Luther King Jr. Scholarship Breakfast Committee, and I have the honor of serving as your Mistress of Ceremonies for this morning's program. At last year's breakfast, we pivoted in the pandemic, not only to go virtual, but to bring a panel discussion to the event rather than a keynote speaker. That multi generational panel was absolutely amazing and left us thinking, what's next? Where do we go beyond the movement or the moment? This year, we endeavored to bring to you the voices of Generation Next, young adults who themselves are already making a mark on this community and this world. They are indeed the voices who will signal our next move. We open this opportunity this year for those young adults to speak truth to power, as well as celebrate the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We should recall that Dr. King himself was only 39 years old when he was assassinated. It was that age, the same age or younger, represented by some of our panelists, that Dr. King found his voice, began a movement, and indeed changed the world. I would now like to invite Deacon Arthur Miller to open our program with the invocation. Deacon Miller?
Thank you, Joel. Lord, Lord of all creation, Lord of forever, Lord who was before was, you have looked down upon your sweet creation. You have blessed this place, this world, Lord. We have struggled in looking and embracing the beauty that you have given us. Help us every single day, Lord, to find within this place the beauty that you created it to be. Help us, Lord, to look upon one another. Help us to follow those shepherds like Dr. King, who taught us that there is all but one commandment that we must follow: to love you, Lord, and to love one another as we love ourselves. Lord, help us to get through this struggle. Help us to overcome this long and thirsty and desperate journey so that we might meet and greet one another at that mountain of love. Lord, help us this day. Help us to find you within one another. We ask this through your most precious word, and let the congregation say, Amen.
Amen. Amen. You all will recall that Deacon Miller was on our panel last year, and you will have the opportunity to hear from him in just a few moments later on in our program.
Lift every voice until earth and heaven ring with the heart Lord needs. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast, is cast. God of our wearies, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light. Keep us forever in the path, we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee, shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land, native land.
Good morning. As the president of the Hartford Alumnae chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, I extend to you a heartfelt welcome to the 37th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Scholarship Breakfast. I am elated that you have joined us for this year's podcast. Each year, we come together to honor the legacy of Dr. King and evaluate our progress in achieving the elements expressed in his I Have a Dream speech. As we approach the 59th anniversary of his speech, we are still in pursuit of a promise that all people, yes, Black as well as white, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In 2021, we brought together a powerful group of panelists who discussed civil rights, a movement or moment. Where Deacon Arthur Miller of St. Mary's Church in Simsbury urged the younger generations to continue the work toward improving the world where every individual is entitled to and receives equal rights and opportunities. Today's discussion is a sequel to that conversation with a focus on Generation Next, speaking truth to power. This morning, we will hear from a group of young adults as they share their perspectives on the challenges and changes needed to help ensure a better future, defend collective interest, and demand an increase in political accountability. I echo the words of Senator John Lewis that it is time for us to get in good trouble, necessary trouble, and help redeem the soul of America. Nothing can stop the power of a committed and determined people to make a difference in our society. Why? Because human beings are the most dynamic link to the divine on this planet. I want to thank Rocket Ship Consultants, our MLK Breakfast Committee, our Public Relations and Technology Committee, members of the Hartford Alumni Chapter, along with community and corporate partners for your support. Without you, today's event would not be possible. The proceeds from today's event will be used to fund a renewable scholarship for African American females pursuing higher education. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you so much, Lakeisha. I certainly would have never imagined that we would be here once again in a virtual setting. But hopefully, you are all comfortable at home with a warm beverage as you engage in today's program. You also have as your guide our digital program flipbook, which you should have received a link to in the email that you received this morning. However, we also will be placing a link to the digital flipbook in the chat on YouTube. Please be sure to take a look at the digital program book as it provides the bios for our panelists as well as the program for you to follow along. Each year, as many of you know who've joined us in the past, we are joined by our elected officials, national, state, and local, to welcome all of you to the breakfast. Please welcome Senator Blumenthal, Senator Murphy, Governor Lamont, Lieutenant Governor Susan Bisowitz, State Treasurer Sean Wooden, and Hartford Mayor Luke Bronin.
Good morning, Deltas. Luke Bronin, Mayor of the City of Hartford, and it is an honor to be with you this morning. I am so sorry that we cannot be together in person this morning because this is always one of the most important and powerful breakfasts of the year in Hartford, and because this is a very special year to celebrate the Deltas. Our city is so proud of Cheryl Hickman's election as president of the Deltas nationwide. We have long been proud of her national leadership role, but what an extraordinary honor for our city, for our state, and for this chapter to have Cheryl Hickman as the national president. Congratulations, Cheryl. Congratulations to this chapter, and we are all so proud. I also am grateful to be with you because, like everybody else in the city, I have the honor of working side by side Deltas every day to try to make our community and our state stronger. There are so many extraordinary Deltas doing extraordinary work in everything from leadership on boards of education to leadership in health equity, to advocacy for women and children and families, to work for the most vulnerable among us, not to mention tremendous leadership in business, in medicine, in law, in every arena in our city and state. And of course, it's an honor to be part of this breakfast, which plays such an important role in continuing the Delta's mission of supporting education and scholarship and lifting young people up and creating opportunities for others who will do what you all have done, which is to lift up their community throughout their lives. So thank you for this ongoing tradition. And finally, it is always a privilege to be with you to commemorate and to recognize Martin Luther King Day and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. Over the past few years, we as a country and as a community have recognized just how much work remains to be done. I'm proud of the way our community has come together to try to get better and to do better, and we have a great deal more work to do, but I'm grateful for the chance to do that alongside you. And it's also important to say that in this year and in the years ahead, we will face a test that maybe more than any other will tell us whether or not we can fulfill the dream of Dr. Martin Luther King, and that is whether or not we can protect our democracy, protect the right to vote, not just at the individual level, but collectively, whether we can protect the democracy where the results of elections are honored and where everyone has the chance to express their voice through their vote. The Deltas nationally have played a critical role in that, and I know you in Connecticut here will here as well. So thank you again for the privilege of being with you for yet another breakfast. I cannot wait till we can be together again in person, looking out over that inspiring sea of red in the convention center. But in the meantime, to all of you, thank you for what you do. Stay healthy, stay safe, and God bless you.
Good morning. I'm State Treasurer Sean Wooden, and I want to thank the Hartford Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority for inviting me to participate in the 37th Annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Scholarship Breakfast. As a Hartford native and a fellow Divine Nine member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, I have always appreciated this annual gathering. The Deltas have shown an incredible commitment to the greater Hartford community throughout the years. In fact, I've thanked you before, but I'll take this opportunity to thank you again for the SAT prep course that you made available to Hartford kids like me applying to college. Thank you to the Deltas and to your soror, Barbara Aileen, who transitioned to the Omega Omega chapter for your leadership. Your program made me better prepared for the SAT, and it will forever be a part of my story of educational success. Now, today, we gather once again to honor Dr. King's life and legacy. We reflect on his fight for social justice, economic justice, and the opportunity for all of us to have a shot at the American dream. I'd like to take a moment to share a story with you. While I was running for state treasurer in 2018, I was honored to have Martin Luther King III, Dr. King's oldest son, come to Connecticut from Atlanta and endorse my candidacy for state treasurer. Martin is a lifelong human rights advocate and a former president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, where his work focused on economic justice and eradicating poverty, much like his father. Now, we met previously through a mutual friend, but he shared with me that before a conversation about my race, he didn't fully understand the ins and outs of what a state treasurer actually does. Once he realized the scope of my office's work, he told me something that I'll never forget. In a whisper, he said, "Sean, you need to win this. And when elected, you need to use the power of your office to change communities for the better." Since I took the oath of office, I have been working to live up to Martin's challenge and help deliver on the legacy of Dr. King himself. Whether it's my corporate call to action, where I've convened 18 leading financial services firms to work with me and the Ford Foundation to address racial, economic inequality, or my championing the passage of the first in the nation baby bonds program to combat generational poverty and the wealth gap by setting aside money in an investment trust for every child born into poverty in Connecticut. We must find ways to live up to that immense challenge. Now, the principles of the civil rights movement and Dr. King's focus on economic justice at the end of his life are just as relevant today as they were then. But the truth is, we all need to do more. Dr. King's "I Have a Dream" speech was more than a dream. It was really a call to action to all of us. And I hope this breakfast continues to inspire us all to act. While our nation and state made progress last year, we all know that there are significant challenges ahead of us. There is plenty of work to do to follow in Dr. King's footsteps of promoting economic justice and equality for everyone. There is so much work to be done to rebuild an inclusive economy where everyone can thrive. Today, tomorrow, and always, we must continue the fight of women and men like Dr. King as we work towards achieving justice, freedom, and a better world for all. Thank all of you for your dedication and commitment to creating sustainable change for both our local community and our world. And thank you all for being here today.
Good morning and happy Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Thank you to the women of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated Hartford Alumni Chapter for inviting me to participate in this 37th annual scholarship breakfast. Connecticut is so very lucky to be home for so many incredible members of your sisterhood. You serve our communities as government leaders, educators, and healthcare providers, just to name a few, and I thank you. You also make a point of uplifting our youth and today's programming is no exception. Generation Next, Speaking Truth to Power. This morning's platform for young adults to discuss preserving their future, defending our collective interests, and increasing political accountability is not only necessary for today's youth, but it's how previous generations organized for change. And it will remain an ongoing conversation for future generations to come. During the civil rights movement, college students, many from historically Black colleges and universities, led marches, voter registration drives, and social justice actions. And we saw the strength, determination, and fortitude of high school students with the Little Rock Nine. Today, we see Marley Dias, who at just 11 years old launched #1000BlackGirlBooks, a campaign to make books featuring young Black girls as main characters more available. We see Kenendra Roche Woods, who at the age of 16 created the Cheetah movement to remove the shame and stigma around mental health and to support those suffering from mental illness. We see Amanda Gorman, the youngest inaugural poet in the United States history and the first ever National Youth Poet Laureate, inspiring the nation through her creativity and powerful prose. And we see several young artists and activists, some right here in Connecticut, who have raised awareness and organized protests about gun violence, police brutality, sexual assault, and so many other issues that plague our communities. One of my favorites is Danbury's Chelsea Fair, a 12-year-old CNN young wonder who founded Chelsea's Charity, donating over 22,000 art kits to youth across the globe. Chelsea shares a story about giving her bully an art kit, hoping that her bully could find some peace in art, as Chelsea did after experiencing loss. This gesture led to a friendship between the two and is a reminder to us all that purity and open-mindedness of our youth can create the transformative change we need. I know many adults who can learn a lot from Chelsea. And while Chelsea's mother is a Delta, so I know she's in good hands, I also know how important it is that we are, as a community, nurturing Chelsea and other children her age to share their gifts with the rest of us, not only as talented youth, but by encouraging them through youth adulthood to participate in government, philanthropy, business, and every part of this world that needs representation from those who dare to believe that our conflicts are resolvable. So as you discuss political accountability this morning, know that preserving the future and defending the collective interests of our most marginalized populations is a priority for me and for the governor. And know that I understand representation matters. As the chair of the Governor's Council on Women and Girls, I've spearheaded legislative and administrative efforts towards a more inclusive state government. I've also taken a particular interest in early childhood education, which is at the bedrock of both inclusive representation and cultivating young talent. It is critical that we offer our children the best developmental care in their early years and continue to foster their growth with safe and resourceful education opportunities. And I can assure you that I will stay the course to reach children in our most vulnerable populations and to make sure they are heard and represented in policymaking decisions. Thank you again, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, for creating a space for our youth to do this very important work. And thank you to all the guests who have joined today to contribute to these efforts. I wish you a successful scholarship breakfast and continued achievement in all your noble efforts. Thank you so much.
Here is to the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Inc. I'm so sorry we're not in person this year. I love your breakfast, and I'm tired of Zoom. Here's to Connecticut's very own Cheryl Hickman. Thank you for your leadership. You and Dr. Washington, and representing this hope for all these young girls who are on their way to college thanks to your amazing efforts. Here's to Happy Founders Day and everything that means, and the 37th annual Dr. Martin Luther King breakfast. When it comes to speaking truth to power, I hope that's one of the things we remember about Martin Luther King. He stood up to those forces every day. And I'd like to think some of those values he got during his summer here in Connecticut as a teenager, right down the street in Simsbury. And he wrote stories, letters home to his daddy King. And he said, I love Connecticut. I sit next to white people in restaurants, at churches, in public transportation, and everybody makes me feel at home. And then on his way back to Atlanta, he was in an integrated railroad car down to Washington, D.C. And in Washington, he remembers in his letter, they made me step out and go into a segregated car. And he said, I will never let that happen again. And he spent the rest of his life speaking truth to power. And that's exactly what you're doing every day. And that's why we remember Martin Luther King. And God bless each and every one of you for everything you're doing in the name of equal rights and justice. And make sure we exercise our right to vote and don't let them take it away from us. God bless you all.
Hey everyone, it's Chris Murphy, United States Senator. Thanks to my friends at Delta Sigma Theta for once again putting on this really important Martin Luther King Jr. Day event. You know, I try to be there whenever I can. I'm sorry that I can't be with you in person today, but let me just say thank you to everything that the sorority does throughout the state of Connecticut and the country to lift up communities. Thanks for your commitment to celebrating and memorializing the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. And thank you for making the theme of today's event speaking truth to power, because at his essence, that's what Martin Luther King Jr. was about, speaking truth to power, right? Recognizing injustices and then bringing that injustice to the most powerful people in the world and shaming them into action. That's what we have to do today. And your focus on helping the youth of our state become agents of change, well, it's so critical. It's so critical because if we look at any great social change movement in this country, at the top of the list, the civil rights movement, they were all led by young people. And so I'm deeply grateful for the work you do to bring folks together in Connecticut every single year. I'm sorry that I can't be there in person with you. But I hope everyone in attendance thinks a little bit about what it means to speak truth to power.
Hi, I'm Richard Blumenthal, your United States Senator, and I am so honored and excited to be with you this morning as we remember the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and recommit to advancing his goals for a more just and equal society. Thank you, Dr. Lakeisha Grant, Washington, and Nushet Black-Burke for inviting me to this wonderful event. I'm thrilled that you continue to welcome me back, even though I don't own a single red suit. I regret that once again we are not meeting in person. I always look forward to attending your very uplifting, energetic, inspirational event. It's a privilege always to celebrate the Hartford Alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta for your longstanding, profoundly significant work in the greater Hartford community. How appropriate that the theme of today's breakfast is speaking truth to power. For decades, Martin Luther King Jr. defied power in the name of justice. And he stood up to power in the cause of righteousness. Power takes many forms, and Dr. King was an expert at disobeying peacefully and civilly just about every one of them. Wherever he campaigned, Dr. King held power's gaze and spoke the truth unflinchingly. His dauntlessness ushered the world toward a fairer and freer future. I'm proud and heartened to see a new generation taking up his mantle. As much as Dr. King accomplished, the last 50 years, and in particular the last few years, have shown that we still have a lot of work to do. In the wake of George Floyd's murder last May, millions of Americans took to the streets with peaceful passion to speak truth to power. I had the privilege of attending a number of these marches, quite a few of them, in the depths of despair over George Floyd's murder. The energy, passion, and courage of those events gave me hope. Overwhelmingly, the marches were led by young Americans, teenagers and college students, young professionals and burgeoning activists who tirelessly organized themselves to support and amplify each other. Not only did these change makers generate renewed energy and interest in remedying systematic racism, they put real pressure on all in power. You are our future. You give us faith in the words of Dr. King, who said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." Continuing to speak truth to power and carrying Reverend King's legacy forward is what we celebrate this day. Thank you, Delta. Thank you for your great work. Thank you for your passion and inspiration. And I'll see you in person next year with at least a red tie. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of our elected officials for your deep commitment to this event. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Elsie Cook Holmes, the National First Vice President of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, to bring you words of greeting.
Good morning to members of the National Board of Directors, including Hartford's own Jean Cosley, Hartford Alumni Chapter President Lakeisha Grant Washington, officers and members of Hartford Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, elected officials, panelists, other program participants, and to all of you, my Delta sisters and other guests who have gathered virtually to support the 37th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Scholarship Breakfast. It is my privilege to extend greetings on behalf of the National President and National Board of Directors of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Cheryl A. Hickman, and over 300,000 initiated members. I am especially honored to greet you on behalf of Hartford's own Cheryl A. Hickman, our national president, longstanding member of Hartford Alumni Chapter, and a dear friend. I first attended this breakfast in the 90s at the invitation of Ms. Hickman and have been pleased over the years to watch it grow into one of my favorite observances of Dr. King's legacy and an anticipated celebration within this community. Kudos to the Hartford Alumni Chapter, its leadership, members, and supporters for creating and continuing this premier event in the Hartford area throughout the years as part of your outstanding service to this community. This year's event, as well as last year's, looked a little different in this virtual environment, but I applaud your ability to pivot during these unparalleled times. One of the blessings of this virtual environment, though, a necessity of this continued pandemic, is the opportunity for sisters, friends, family, and supporters to join from near and far. In many ways, this event, as it honors one of our greatest civil rights leaders, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., funds educational opportunities and inspires action, embodies who we are as a sorority. Deltas have been making an impact on the world for 109 years through sisterhood, scholarship, service, and social action. Our sorority was founded on January 13, 1913, in the midst of social and civil uncertainty and the struggle for greater equity. Today, we again are at a time of great transition. Our founders were courageous young women with a passion for service and a vision for making a difference. And again, we as a society are looking to our youth to continue the struggle, to combat the issues of the day, to advocate for voting rights, social, racial, and economic justice. Let this serve as a call to action for Generation Next to speak truth to power and to bring its energy and commitment to manifesting the change that has been such a long time coming. Let this be a call to action across the generations to continue the advocacy and action. Keep the faith, and as Galatians 6:9 says, not grow weary or become discouraged in doing good. It is a pleasure to join you today virtually, and I look forward to my next in-person visit to Hartford. Hartford alumni, thank you for your continued efforts. And to the many guests, thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate your support of the deserving scholars that will benefit and your concern for the community. Enjoy what promises to be a great panel discussion. And regardless of generation, let's leave today with a renewed dedication to speak truth to power and continue the struggle.
Thank you so much, Elsie, for your powerful words. We do indeed hope that we will be back together again next year in person. I just want to remind you all that if you do need closed captioning support, the link for the closed captioning has been provided in the YouTube chat. It is also currently scrolling across the screen. Please also continue to refer to the digital program book, which also is available to you via link in the YouTube chat. Now, speaking of the live chat, I decided to take a quick look at who's out there. And many of you have shared with us where you're watching from. So please, please type in, let us know where you're viewing from, and engage with us as we move throughout this breakfast. I've seen a number of our sister Delta chapters from across the country, and many of our other fellow Divine Nine members who chimed in, our church family, our friends, relatives of our panelists. Thank you so much for being with us today. And we hope you continue to share with us via the live chat. Since 1985, the Hartford Alumni Chapter has invited corporations and community organizations in the greater Hartford region to join us at this breakfast in support of our scholarship program. We can't thank our corporate and community sponsors enough for embodying the dreams of Dr. King by continuing to support this program. This year, we are pleased to have increased the number of corporate and community partners who've come into the fold to support our mission of breaking down barriers to access for Black college-bound young women, excuse me, from the greater Hartford area. I am pleased to welcome new sponsors this year, Global Atlantic Financial at the silver level, and the Yard Goats Foundation at the partner level. This is the first time for both of those sponsors, and we thank you and welcome you. We also have several sponsors who increased their giving this year. Voya Financial at the silver level and Carmen Funeral Home at the bronze level. Again, we thank you for your renewed commitment, as well as all of our sponsors who you are able to view a full list of in your program. We have our sponsors at the gold level, beginning with Travelers. Our silver level sponsors, Global Atlantic Financial Group, Voya Financial, Trinity Health of New England, Pratt & Whitney, CVS Health, and Eversource. Our bronze sponsors, Carmen Community Funeral Homes, TD Bank, the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, Webster Bank, and the Hartford. And our nonprofit sponsors, the YWCA of the Hartford region, the Yard Goats Foundation, the Bushnell, Goodwin University, Wheeler Health, and Eastern Connecticut State University. As you all can see, I got a little bit carried away, but I want our sponsors to know just how much we appreciate them. You also may have noticed at the end of that video montage that there was a list of sponsors that were entitled Violet sponsors. Those are members of Delta Sigma Theta who've made an above and beyond commitment to this year's breakfast. And we thank our sorors so much for their engagement. Additionally, once again this year, I want to share with you that we have partnered with K-Bar, a Black-owned business in Hartford, who has generously agreed to provide a discount to you should you print and bring in your confirmation from attending this event. It is important that we support our local businesses at this time, particularly those that are Black-owned. Please patronize K-Bar, and thank you so much, Kevin Joyner, the co-owner, for your continued support of our breakfast. Since our chapter was chartered in 1947, we have held at our core a commitment to academic excellence. Many of our chapter members are educators at all levels of the system and have a bird's eye view into the classroom every day. We know that although the media may portray challenges and difficulty within our classrooms, in particular as we navigate the pandemic, we also know that there are bright lights within our school system, talented young men and women who only need a little bit of extra support and commitment from all of us as citizens to support public education, to volunteer, and to give back. Through your generous support over the years, we have been able to award more than $300,000 in scholarships to deserving young college-bound women who are high school graduates from the greater Hartford area. Your presence here this year at yet another successful breakfast ensures that we will be able to continue our mission. As has been our practice in the past, we think it's really important to give you an opportunity to hear directly from one of our scholarship recipients. This year is no different. I now have the pleasure of introducing you to one of our past scholarship recipients, Ms. Kyla Flynn.
Greetings, scholarship recipients, sponsors, guests, and the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta. First, I would like to thank God because without Him, I would not be here, and my family for their continued support on my journey. Along with many other scholarships I received, Delta Sigma Theta was one of the scholarships I earned in 2016. During this time, I was a young Black girl who graduated as the first valedictorian from Global Communications Academy, excited to see what my educational endeavors would incur. Late August 2016, I stepped foot on Springfield College's campus and began my journey as a sports biology major. During my time at Springfield, I was an advocate in and out of the classroom. I was very passionate about social justice and ensuring that my voice was consistently heard. For 2 years, I served as a resident assistant where I hosted a plethora of programs shining light on mental health, safety, and social justice. Along with another colleague, we hosted a When They See Us watch party and talk back for a month. The docuseries When They See Us focuses on the exonerated 5 who were falsely convicted of raping a Central Park jogger in 1989. This program birthed some essential dialogue the Springfield community needed. The president of Springfield, Mary Beth Cooper, met with me and my counterpart, eager to follow the program by having one of the exonerated 5 come to campus to share her story. Although I graduated in May 2020, Dr. Yusuf Salam virtually hosted a webinar in August 2021. Legacy. Leaving a legacy was never at the forefront of my mind, but because I was doing things I was passionate about, I saw myself leaving a legacy that I am proud of. I would like to thank the women of Delta Sigma Theta for playing a role in my success at Springfield College. After graduating from Springfield, I continued my educational studies and pursued a nursing degree from George Washington University, and I recently graduated in December 2021. Joining the most trusted profession during a time like this brings a tremendous amount of uncertainty, but I know that being a passionate Black woman in this space will continue to change the trajectory of health for Black and Brown people in healthcare. I urge you, scholarship recipients, to use your voice and commit yourself to whatever you are passionate about. You are needed at a time like this. Your seat at the table is vital, and we are depending on you to bring change. Sponsors, I would like to thank you for sowing a seed into my educational journey and seeing the need to contribute to the Martin Luther King Jr. Scholarship. Myself and all the recipients are eternally grateful for your contributions. Thank you.
Whew. Now, I have some written remarks that said, "Isn't she incredible?" But I have to tell you, I am so moved by the words that Kyla shared because we can see literally the fruits of the benefit of the investment that each of us have made by giving to this scholarship program in this young woman. And as you can see, she too now is turning around to give back to young people as an educator. Um, I just really want to encourage you, should you feel moved, to visit our website at www.dsthartford.com and click on MLK Scholarship Breakfast. Now, I know that you're probably thinking, well, we paid a price of admission to view the breakfast, and that is true. But if you were moved like I was, as you heard Kyla reflect on the importance of commitment of this community to ensure her educational pursuits, if I were you, I would go to dsthartford.com, click on MLK Breakfast, and that button in the middle of the page that says donate. This is indeed your opportunity to invest in the future of young women like Kyla, who continue to make an impact in their communities and in this world. Speaking of powerful women, next we will hear from Hartford's own Mind Evolution, also known as Tracy Caldwell, delivering an original piece entitled Ready for War, the New Dream Speech, followed by a selection entitled Destiny by the Yukon Voices of Freedom under the direction of our own soror, Reverend Lisa Clayton.
400 years to explain, and none of the gibberish is making sense. Our babies are not as tired as the rest of us. Their hearts and feet will sound like the hip-hop beats you will not be able to turn down or off. The lyrics will not be "we shall overcome." It'll be "say our name" as they are you up for the rape of Africa, the Amazon, and America. You might want to start humbling yourself from now. There'll be no time to count the number of black or brown friends you have. Charity receipts will be null and void. You'll be paying for the side your forefathers chose, just like we've been taking the same whippings our grandparents endured. They're coming back for the genocide of the indigenous people of every nation. Negotiations ain't happening. Your people don't honor treaties. No one's turning the other cheek. They're playing your way. Greasy. You're covered on all sides. You will not be able to divide and conquer because they have already organized and accomplished your demise. My community is an army, not a barrel of crabs. This war will not be televised. Campaign lies will not quench this fire. Can't we all get along? Speeches will not be penned. Careful moments will not be waited for. Right words will not be spoken. It'll be the time all your fears come true. These soldiers will be hunting for the peace you stole. Your accountability will be as swift as the swipe of the blade or the time it takes for the bullet to leave the chamber and into your brain. Your life depends on the size of your house, how many cars you own, and how much money is in your account. The greater the sum, the quicker they will come for you. Your dynasty of terror has been long enough. Your greed choked out our ancestors, but not the greatness you thought we gave up on. These babies will stand on the shores you stole our mothers from, with their anger harnessed in the form of cannons, picking the locks coming through the door, blasting.
Jeremiah 29:1, God has a plan. Come on, Joel, let's encourage the people.
And we know all things work together.
My soul says yes, Lord.
For the good of them that love the Lord.
Completely yes, Lord.
God has called me and He's given purpose.
My soul says yes, Lord.
And I trust Him with my whole heart.
Completely yes,
For you
Lord.
have a plan for me, made a way for me. Your name I adore. To harm you,
completely yes, Lord.
Just to give you hope.
Good morning. And once again, welcome to all of you. This being our 37th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Scholarship Breakfast. The theme of our 36th Scholarship Breakfast was Civil Rights, Movement or Moment. And it was during this time that Deacon Arthur Miller, panelist from last year, admonished generations coming after him to get off his shoulder. So this year's sequel, motivated by such profound reproach, is Generation Next, Speaking Truth to Power. It's not that I disagree with Dr. Miller, but if Generation Next is not to stand on the shoulders of generations past, then what? How do young adults wisely maneuver and navigate this society where they are most relevant and yet most vulnerable? Most relevant and yet most underrepresented. Most relevant and yet most marginalized without a voice. Based on the 2020 census, there are about 330 million people in these United States of America, of which the largest group is young adults between the age 25 to 29. Now let's connect the dots to federal policy makers. Can the 435 members of the House of Representatives at an average age of 58.4 years and senators at an age of 64.3 years grapple with, or do they even care about the interests and concerns of these young people as it relates to justice and equality for all people, without regard not only to age, but without regard to race, color, creed, national origin, disability, religion, gender, and sex? Well, we are about to find out. You will hear from a panel of Generation Next, age 20 to 29, who will not only speak up and speak out, they will speak truth to power. Here to introduce the panel is Mistress of Ceremony, Joelle Murchison.
Thank you so much, Dolores. And I want to also thank Mind Evolution and the Yukon Gospel Choir for setting the stage for this panel discussion. Dolores, I also would be remiss if we did not thank you for serving as the chair of the MLK Scholarship Breakfast, probably for more years than you can count. We are grateful to you for your leadership and your penchant for watching MSNBC, as we know that that served as the core of your willingness to engage in this dialogue. That's a little joke. Dolores watches a lot of MSNBC. It is now my distinct honor to introduce to you our panel for today's discussion. Our moderator for today's program, I must admit, I've known since she was an infant, but I had not seen her in years until she chose the right decision to attend my alma mater, Brown University, and of course became a member of the right sorority. Jasmine Powell is a senior at Brown University studying public health and urban studies. She is also a student in the program in liberal medical education, which is Brown's combined 8-year combined BA MD program. Jasmine is originally from the greater Philadelphia area, where she found her voice during her teenage years through her involvement in local advocacy work with girls' rights organizations. Jasmine is currently the president of the Lambda Iota chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and served with distinction as the president of the Brown College Democrats during a very tumultuous political time in our nation. Jasmine is passionate about finding ways to better support women and girls of color and looks forward to a career in medicine, working to bring innovative solutions to health policy and address the social context of health and disease. Jasmine will very capably lead us through the remainder of today's program as the moderator of the panel. I will now turn the floor over to Jasmine Powell.
Thank you so much, Sora. I really appreciate it. I'm so honored to be here with you all today, and very much looking forward to continuing to celebrate the amazing legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., as well as his commitment to justice and equality, because that means a lot to me. It means a lot to so many of the people that we will have on our panel. So today we're going to be reflecting on the theme Generation Next, speaking truth to power. I know that I'm feeling energized and moved after listening to remarks from so many amazing people, as well as listening to a fellow young woman who's been a recipient of the scholarship. So without further ado, let me introduce the panel. We have some amazing people joining us today, and I just feel honored to share space with them and be in their company as we reflect on the legacy of Martin Luther King and chart our path forward as people. So first, I'm going to be introducing Akia Callum. And Akia Callum serves as the Director of Community Impact and Marketing for Waterbury Bridge to Success Community Partnership. As a seasoned brand architect, community organizer, political strategist, social justice advocate, trained results-based facilitator, and educator with 10 plus years of experience, Akia knows how to move from systems change to systems transformation, locally, statewide, and nationally. A proud daughter of immigrants and a Brooklyn native, Akia believes relationship building is key. She developed a love for community advocacy and social justice at a young age through her work in the New York City Council. Since then, Akia founded the Black Student Union at Post University in 2015 and served in various leadership roles at premier organizations, including the NAACP on the state and national levels. Recently, Akia served as president of the Connecticut State Conference NAACP Youth and College Division and an adjunct professor at Post University. She is a Yale Access to Law Fellow and holds bachelor's degrees in legal studies, as well as a master's of education with a concentration in curriculum and instruction from Post University. So welcome, Akia. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Jasmine.
Yes. Our next panelist that I will be introducing is Devana Devine. And Devana is a proud resident of Middletown, and she received a BS in Business Management and an MBA in Business Analytics from Central Connecticut State University. She is a marketing and communications professional, currently serving as Director of Marketing Communications at EdAdvance, one of the state's 6 regional education service centers. As an entrepreneur, Devana produces strategic marketing plans to help other entrepreneurs and political figures tell stories, achieve an online presence, and build brands that communicate with their audience. Devana also serves as vice chair of the Middletown Democratic Town Committee, has worked as campaign manager for State Representative Q Phipps, and is a 2021 recipient of the Ella Grasso Women's Leadership Award. So welcome, Devana. We're so honored to have you here also.
Thank you, Jasmine.
And our final panelist is Erin Peterson. Erin is a second semester junior studying theater performance at Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut. Erin believes transformative change is needed to preserve the future. For those reasons, he defines himself as an actor and activist who is passionate about volunteer work and social change. He cheers at his college as well as for an all-star traveling team. He enjoys social organizing, spending time with like-minded people, as well as getting outdoors. Welcome, Erin. We are also so happy to have you here. So without further ado, I'm going to get right into the questions. But before that, I just wanted to thank all of our amazing panelists for being willing to participate in this discussion today. I already know that it's going to be amazing and cannot wait to hear your answers, and for everyone else in attendance to hear them too. So starting off, I know we have been reflecting throughout this breakfast already in people's remarks kind of about that tension between us as the future and us as youth moving forward to advance, the cause of our people while simultaneously reflecting on kind of what has come before us and who has come before us, especially on a day like today where we're honoring Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So first, I just wanted to kind of ask if each panelist could let us know if they wanted to model themselves, as we probably all do, after a champion for civil rights, who would that be and why? I know who wants to kick us off.
I could go. Good morning, everybody, and glad to see you all here again on this Monday. My person that I would choose is Fannie Lou Hamer, and if you know her famous quote, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired," I think it's relevant more than ever, even now today. On the day of Martin Luther King's celebration and his remembrance, we are still fighting currently for voting rights. And Fannie Lou Hamer, as you might know, was a critical part of our voting rights exploration, but also made sure that young people were at the table. And I think when we think about how civil rights movements, we're talking about the 1950s till today, young people have always been a part of the equation. And I love the fact that Fannie did not forget where she came from, but also she also empowered or encouraged young people to also take the mantle and take space as much as possible. So that is definitely the person that I would like to model myself after.
Definitely. I know Sora's in the audience are definitely very happy to hear you say that too. I will pass it over to Devana. Do you want to go next?
Sure. So the running joke in my family has always been that they call me Angela Davis. And I feel like now that resonates a lot more with me than maybe particularly in the past. They've always joked about me being an activist because I will speak out about anything I do or do not believe in. But one of the things that she really focused on championing, I can't say that word this morning, but she was a champion of equity. And she spoke to very early on this idea of intersectionality, where we're also focused on being champions of people as their whole self. And a lot of the times that's a big piece of the conversation when people are talking about either being a Black man or being a Black woman and how unique those experiences are with those two things combined, but also really being mindful of the other pieces of the puzzle that make our experiences very unique. And I am someone who definitely more than ever believes in the power of honoring people as their whole selves. So that's something about Angela Davis that I love and something she was very forward thinking on and something I would love to model.
Definitely. What about you, Aaron?
Okay, so first of all, I wanted to say it's a huge honor to be here once again. First of all, I would like to model myself after Malcolm X, I would say, because he just had a certain air about him that it had an unapologeticness about himself, trying to whatever means necessary, not portraying his activism through a lens of, oh, how can you get it? But no, how are we going to get this done for everybody? And yeah, I would say Malcolm X.
Definitely. Yeah. And I definitely resonate a lot with what Aaron was saying. And honestly, all of the panelists, because I think all of the civil rights leaders that you highlighted were people that were never afraid, to go against the grain and to stand up for what was right and kind of do what needed to be done. So definitely very happy to hear those reflections. And yeah, I guess this kind of segues perfectly into the next question that I had, which was from the Underground Railroad through Reconstruction era, surviving Jim Crow law, and our fight for civil rights, what strategies of generations past do you consider effective, which do you consider not effective, and what would you have done differently? So just kind of some reflections on that.
I'll jump in first. I don't think it's wise to necessarily judge any strategies or tactics that they use because that was a different time, that was a different world. I do not know that lived experience. So I think we should always be cautious about judging the things that worked effectively in a time past. But I think one thing that we really have to focus on in the next generation is really learning to leverage the things that make this next generation great, right? So we really have to tap into our resources and things like social media and really think about strategically how to leverage that, because one of the amazing things about social media and technology and these platforms that we have and the reasons they've been so beneficial is because you instantly have reach to so many people. We've put so many eyes on like really big issues and really force people to listen to us because you can't avoid it when it's every single place you look, when you open your phone or every time you look in the computer, or if it's something people are always talking about nonstop, consistently. So I think that's really where we need to place our focus and not necessarily be judging what generations past have done, because they worked for a reason and times are different. and times have changed. And some of that stuff may be effective because, as Minnie spoke to earlier and previously, the people that have been transformative, a lot of them are still walking this earth. So they shouldn't be disregarded. They're still people we need to connect with.
I think I agree with Devonna. I think also because our backgrounds are in marketing, we understand the importance of what social media does and how, honestly, especially in this pandemic, how social media has really brought a lot of people together. And you wouldn't know about Breonna Taylor, you wouldn't know about George Floyd without the hashtag and really like censoring that. But I do see that some of the things that they have done in the past, whether it was locking arms together and having clergy on the outside when they were doing protests, right? Like those common skills a lot of folks don't know about when they're pulling together organized protests. And I think it's important for us to have those conversations. But I think the only thing that might have changed, and I echo Devonna in the sense that, you know, we weren't there, right? That's not my lived experience. It's more of a learned experience for me. But I think respectability politics was definitely a downfall of ours. And really thinking about how that shows up, where the person that has that lived experience might not be the most polished, or might be talking in Ebonics and utilizing different types of forms of language, which, you know, kind of takes away from the person being whole. And I think that is definitely something that still lives on today, when we're having these conversations about who should be dressed up and how we should present ourselves, and we have to have our hair slicked back a certain way, and like really now starting, I think the last 10 years, really starting to embrace natural hair and what natural hair looks like and embodies, right? But really having that conversation of how can we now dismantle white supremacy, which is at the core of that, and have those real hardcore conversations about, you know, who needs to be at the table, which is everybody, and how do we now make sure that everybody's voice is centered and put on a pedestal, because they're all valuable contributions to our environment.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just think social media is extremely, extremely important right now. As you were saying, Akia, no one would even have known about Breonna Taylor unless the videos and all the social media blowing up. And I think also a big part of this, the strategies that work, is showing people how angry we are, showing people, getting out in the streets protesting. Yeah, because a big thing that people like say is, oh, racism's not real, this doesn't happen, oh, that was so long ago, so many years ago, da, 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 da. But we have to show, by showing them, by having 1 million tweets or whatever, or 1 million hashtags on Instagram, they can't deny it then, because social media and the internet is a part of everybody's everyday life. So we have to show them exactly what we mean, completely spell it out for them. And that seems to be what's working in the most explicit terms. Rioting and things of that nature are the most radical, of course, but it seems to work, getting people to show what we mean and what we're actually going through.
Definitely. No, definitely. I agree with all of you. And I like how Devonna was pushing back a little bit, even just on the question, because, yeah, I do agree. I mean, I think it's important to kind of know what happened in the past, but also to acknowledge that we're living in very, very different circumstances. So yeah, I guess it kind of moves into my next question, which is kind of about, you know, after drawing attention to all of this, what's going to come next? So just interested to hear if you all feel that policymakers hear the concerns of this kind of next generation. And if you don't feel that way, what do you think would take to kind of get them to hear us and yeah, to get our desired results as we kind of continue to draw attention to these issues with the hope that we obviously get a change?
I'll start. Policymakers absolutely don't hear us. When you think about, like, when I'm watching the news, right, you're not ever seeing young people portraying their ideas or thinking about or letting them know, like, our perspective on it. It's generally, white, older men who are letting us know what's going on in the world. And I believe what needs to be done, you're gonna have to come back to me on that one. I want to hear what some other people have to say, but yeah, do they hear us?
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. Akia or Devonna, do any of you guys kind of know what do you guys think can be done? I feel like this is always a fluid, reflective kind of thing, but yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess I'll have to push back on Aaron. I think they are hearing us. In the state of education where we're talking about student loan, that's a hot topic right now, right? President Biden was about to end the moratorium for us to now pay back. I don't have the money to pay it back, so hopefully he's able to cancel it after this. But, you know, really having this conversation, and organizers, young organizers our age and younger, were able to push back and have him push it back all the way down to May. So I think they are hearing us. I think we're holding the word for the last 2 years for me was accountability, and making sure that not only lawmakers were hearing us, but the communities were also rallying around issues that they're invested in their communities. So if it's housing, if it's talking about COVID-19 and how that's further inundated Black and Brown communities, having conversations about technology access in schools, and making sure that our K-12 schools are also adequately prepared to be educated, but also like changing the grain. Like, what does education now look like, and reimagining what education will look like in the future now that we have gone through a pandemic of 3 years. So I think there is people that are listening to us. Do I think that there are other opportunities for us to kind of raise our voices and hold folks accountable? Absolutely. Like Fannie Lou Hamer has always said, like, the power is definitely in our vote. And really trying to exercise that right, but also galvanize around young people who do not have access to the ability to vote during that time period, where they from the age of 18 and under, and really trying to engage them in civil activities or civic engagement activities that does not require them to vote. So I think that they're hearing them. I think that there's other opportunities for us to really kind of close in and make sure that that's felt widely. Because if I'm feeling it and you don't feel like you're feeling it, then, you know, there's a disconnect there, and there needs to be a communication problem kind of bridging there. So I guess that's my input.
I think my perspective on it actually sort of joins together both Aaron and Akia's perspectives. One of the things I always like to acknowledge when I'm talking politics with people, especially in the era of COVID, is there's a vast difference between like federal politics and like state politics and local politics. And I like to always make sure that I acknowledge that my perspective on life is a lot different, because Connecticut is this amazing little blue bubble of fabulousness in terms of politics and our perspective on things. It is probably much easier to actually be heard and get a hold of your legislators if you live in Connecticut than if you live in some of these other areas and some of these other states. So I think it's a little bit of both of them. I don't feel like the ears are really to the ground at the federal level all of the time. But at the state level, it feels a lot different for me. It feels a lot different for a lot of people. You can call someone's office here and get a hold of someone's aide, even your federal legislators. Like, you can get someone on the phone if you want to talk to one of your senators, your US senators. You can get someone on the phone. I don't know if it'll be them, but you'll get feedback, you'll get a response, and you have people that will help you a lot of the time. With that said, though, I think also to Akia's point, like, we have to get younger generations involved a lot sooner. We have to make it a lot more normal. And one of the ways we can affect change is by convincing people, this is a hard push for me, convincing people that they should be bold enough to jump in there. Like, one of the best ways to make change is to give the people with these ideas a start. And a lot of it starts at lower levels. If you get ambitious, young Black adults into politics and you convince them to run for Common Council, or you convince them to run for planning and zoning or Board of Education, you're painting the path, you're getting them in the know. And once people have the bug, like, they have it, let me tell you. So we just have to really be encouraging and really be willing to learn systems and learn how these offices work, and really encourage younger people to be involved and to take on these leadership positions. That's the easiest way to be heard. Put the people in positions that are saying the things you want them to say, that are talking the talk, that are doing things you want them to do, and really share your beliefs and like share your moral values. I think that's one of the most difficult, but also one of the most effective and quickest paths to making sure you're heard.
Yeah, no, I think you raise a really good point there, Giovanna. And I also think it's really important to highlight more, I guess, like that difference between like local and state politics and then the national. Because I definitely do agree with Aaron. I think a lot of times it feels like politicians like at the federal level aren't really hearing us, but those at the local level may seem to hear us a little bit more. So I think that, yeah, encouraging more youth to kind of tap into their power and to continue to do this, to continue to engage with more local officials is great. But then also, I think we need to continue to move the needle, right, and continue this momentum to the federal level and to get it to the point where we do feel like all elected officials, regardless of what level they're at, are listening to us and hearing us. But yeah, I think that honestly, people kind of feeling like they're not heard is reflected in who votes. So kind of segueing into my next question, statistics show that 51% of young adults between the ages of 25 to 29 exercise their right to vote, whereas 76% between the ages of 64 to 75 vote. I wanted to ask you all what you think attributes to this gap and what steps you recommend we take to close this gap.
I'd love to jump in on this one.
Okay, yeah.
So I think at the forefront of it is kind of what Aaron was just speaking to. We have a trust problem with younger generations. Younger generations absolutely, with good reason, do not trust politicians. So there's a relationship that's been damaged and we definitely need to focus on fixing. But my short answer is definitely access to voting, right? That's something we keep having the conversation about in voter rights. So like this year in particular, I know we overlook some of these in between. Is very important in the state of Connecticut because we have to elect a new Secretary of State. Who we elect or do not elect can make a huge impact on how easy it is to vote, like when it comes time. And one of the things I think that's important for people to realize is access and time is why a larger chunk of people in that age bracket vote. When we sit down before campaign season, we look at the numbers. We know who we have to focus on because they have high voter turnout. And it's usually because they're retired, they have the time during the day to go to the polls, they're the ones electing your mayors, they're the ones electing your local officials because they're at home and it's accessible and it's easy and it doesn't matter what is going on, they will be able to vote. And they're at home and you can call them on the phone and they're going to pick up their house phone and you're going to be able to say, hey, election day is coming and they're going to tell you they're going to go vote. But the past election cycles have also let us know that accessibility is really what drives voter turnout. So even this past election cycle, we just had municipal elections and we did a very big absentee ballot campaign, because this year, again, COVID-19 was a valid reason. And about 80% of the people that returned their application and received an absentee ballot actually returned their ballot. 80%. That is an astronomical number for a municipal election where there is not high voter turnout. So the bottom line is if you give people better access to being able to vote, you make it a little easier, you're much more inclined to get people to actually follow through, including young people. But we really have to address this like trust issue. And I don't know what the answer to that is, or if someone else has an idea about that, but that's a big factor. I hear it all the time. They just don't trust politicians, and with good I don't trust all politicians either. But
absolutely. Yeah, so I think that I completely agree with the trust thing, like absolutely 100% agree on that. I think another huge thing it has to do with is that you can't even vote until you're 18. So when you're 14, 15, 16, 17, you're looking at all these ballots, you're looking at your parents going to vote, you're looking at the news, you're saying, okay, well, I have an opinion about this, but I can't even do anything about it. So by the time you get to 18, you're like, okay, well, I already haven't been, my voice hasn't been heard for this long, so what's the point of doing it now? At least that's how I felt in high school. And I know, like, and also there's a huge education problem. When I was voting for the first time, I looked at that ballot, I was like, what is this? Like, I genuinely never seen a ballot before. It was not taught to me in school. It was not a huge thing. It was not like when you're 18, you need to vote because this is how your voice is heard. It was like okay, you want a sticker? Like, education is a huge right. Education is a huge problem, and I think that lowering the voting age is a huge thing that is being talked about around the country. So there's a program in San Francisco that's been going on for years, since 2015, called Vote 16, and it's a bill in progress to try to get younger people to get younger people out to the polls more consistently and at a younger age. And I heavily believe that's a program that should be instilled throughout the country, because you have all this time to think about. When you're 16, you have an opinion, you have a voice, you know what if you're Democrat or Republican, you know what is going on in the world. So I heavily believe that if we lower the voting age, that would have a lot to do closing that gap.
Definitely. Wow, how am I supposed to go after all of that? I mean, so I guess my experience is skewed. So I want to name that in this space. Within the last couple of years, I've definitely worked with young people across the state of Connecticut as serving as the president of Connecticut State Conference Youth and College Division. And we have about 500 members, young people from the ages of 4 all the way up to 25. So my experience looks a lot different. I had 8-year-olds phone banking and making phone calls and I can't vote, but you can, and these are the
That's
reasons why you need to vote, right? So like having those conversations look different, especially across the country, knowing that we're a national organization. To Ivana's question about like what would the trust gap, how can we bridge that trust gap? I think representation is extremely important. And the fact that we are not empowering young people to take up the mantle and, run for office and like take up spaces that they belong in. I can't relate to somebody that grew up in the suburbs and, had a spoon that like my parents are immigrants. They didn't have the opportunity to vote. My first opportunity to vote was when I was 18 years old. And I wasn't voting for myself, I was voting for my family. And that itself was a little bit more powerful, or it felt like I had more of a weight on my shoulders. So it was important for me to do. I think also like having automatic registration for students that are in high school. So, I know when we were talking to the Secretary of State currently about like what does that look like for us to now have automatic registration, but also to Aaron's point, teaching folks how to actually complete ballots. Like a ballot is a daunting thing to do. It's probably as comparable to the FAFSA when you're going to college, but really trying to figure out what that looks like and having those conversations, those critical conversations about aligning yourself not with people but with interests of your community. And I think we get into this debate about whether we're Democrats or Republicans or bipartisan issues, and if you're independent, all these different things. But what is really going to push our communities forward? To have these critical conversations, but also enact change that is important for us to see not only older generations, but newer generations now bloom and rise up. So I think those are definitely things that we need to think about and take into consideration.
Definitely. No, definitely. And I think, honestly, Kia, you kind of speaking truth to power and highlighting your own work kind of shows us what's possible, right? So you're working with youth who are interested, like you said, at the young age of 4, in voting and getting involved with politics and phone banking and stuff like that. So that just kind of shows us that it is possible. We just need to like keep pushing and advocating for it. Because I think sometimes when, you talk to those old white men, elected official people, they try to act like it's not possible, act like people don't want to engage. And that's kind of like their excuse for restricting voting rights and restricting access to the vote. But like you were just saying, as soon as you kind of introduce it to people, great things happen and people are engaged. So I think you need to kind of keep advocating for some of those bills, like Aaron was saying, with lowering the voting age. And then also, like Devonna was saying, just working to kind of increase access. Because voting obviously is very important. And I would even say voting is about accountability. That's how we hold elected officials accountable. So yeah, thank you all so much for your reflections on that. I guess moving into the next question, related still to voting and our politicians, but kind of shifting more to more activism and kind of advancing Black people, people of color. In this current political tug of war, which is quite frustrating, what do you all think should be the top priority and why?
Everything.
Yeah, honestly. I was doing some reflection. I was like, there's a lot. Sorry, Key, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you good. I was thinking like everything, honestly, because like if you think about all these things go together, and I'm tired of us looking at different topics as in silos. Like education feeds into criminal justice reform, which feeds into health, which feeds into economic sustainability. They all go together, and really think about what the baseline might look like. When we think about housing insecurity and how that also feeds into education, where most of our dollars that support education are really funded through housing. And if folks don't have access to stable housing or don't have access to purchasing a home or being a first home buyer, what does that look like? And economic sustainability is also a real thing too, right? Like if they don't have access to loans, where there's been research and studies that showcase that folks that are interested in purchasing a house are oftentimes given higher interest rates for their loans than white counterparts. Like, what does that look like? Those who are interested in going to schools, I took the LSAT 4 times, right? And like, that is my experience and that is my livelihood, but also talking about how standardized testing is inherently racist. Like, how are we able to have these real conversations and, you know, really trying to move into a level of honesty where we're able to recognize that all of these things need to be put on a pedestal simultaneously and not siloed.
Yeah, and when we talk about like political tug of war, it makes it seem like, or like one of the biggest issues in like a political tug of war, it makes it seem like there's like two sides. Or it's like every like actually look at it. What are the biggest issues right now? COVID, obviously. Black people dying in the street every day, being shot down for no reason. What does that have to do with politics, political right versus left? Nothing really. So it frustrates me a little bit when we talk about politics so much when it comes to like public health issues, people's lives, like life or death issues. So I wish we would skew it away from politics and more to like, how are we helping people, which I guess is through policy and whatnot in legislature, but that just something that frustrates me just a little.
I agree. It's all a matter of resources, and you give people the things that they need, it helps them in all the other places, right? Absolutely. If you give people housing stability, they get to sleep at night. You give people food, they're well fed. It's the same thing. And I always have this debate, especially with children. Like, I knew something was wrong with America when I was witnessing people arguing over children eating for free, like getting free lunch. Like, that's the bare minimum, the bare necessity. If kids are fed and they have somewhere to sleep and they have access to resources, they're not robbing banks, they're not out getting in trouble, they're not causing chaos, right? People in healthy environments are going to school, they're receiving educations, and they're growing up and they're making choices. And then they're on panels like this and like fellowshipping with other like-minded people, like Akia's getting to, like Aaron's getting to. It's all about resources. We can't, again, just make it black and white. It's not. There's so many nuances to livelihoods, so many nuances to like people having healthy, fulfilled lives and really like just succeeding.
Definitely. No, definitely. Yeah. And like I said, I appreciate all of y'all pushing back on me with the questions because I also think this kind of shows where our generation's at, right? Like, we're ready to just kind of like say, nope, I disagree with the whole premise of all of that. We're trying to, chart something new, and we're tired of this. We're going to start something new and make an impact. So yeah, I definitely really appreciate all of that and agree with you all. We need to like stop, getting into all this partisanship and this party says this party says that. We need to just focus on the people, focus on the resources, and be persistent. And not let anything else become a distraction. Because so yeah, I appreciate that. I guess my final question to you all would just be with regard to critical race theory, which I personally agree has become victim to what I was just talking about. It's become like this political football talking point, whatever. And I think that we're kind of getting away from the premise of it, right? And how it identifies the racism that's embedded in our institutions through laws, policies, practices, all of that specifically related to many of the things we were just talking about. So when we look at housing, voting, civil liability, all those other things. I just wanted to see if you all had any reflections, I guess, on critical race theory and how you think that it can be used as a tool as we move forward working towards different social justice issues.
Such another question.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think
I just love that. Well, go ahead, Devonna.
I was just gonna say, I think the bottom line is we just need to toss it out the window. Like not it as a whole, but like the whole critical race theory is such a hot button that people have again gotten away from the message. Like they've gotten away from what it is. And like we're arguing about things that exist. We're arguing about history. And again, it's just blocking progress because people are so upset that it exists, right? So like the change agent again is just going to be organizing in a way that's encouraging new faces, new people, new ideas to get into those places because the laws are established. Like if you don't know the systems, you're not going to be able to change a thing. I think I'm also getting away from the question, but I have a feeling Akia is going to bring it back in. But it's just again, it's just about the change agents and putting people in place that, like, again, are talking about the things that we care about, are passionate about the policy that we're passionate about. But it's also a very tough space to be in, because if you're the Black legislator and you're the only Black legislator in the room, you're talking for all of the rest of us. And like, no one wants to be the spokesperson for Black America. So it's about building teams and affecting change by changing from the ground up, is what I'm getting at.
Definitely.
Devon, you're right. I'm going to bring us back. But when we're talking about critical race theory, the first person that comes to mind is Nicole Hannah-Jones. And if you all haven't read her book, 1619 Project, please do so. Go purchase that at Barnes & Noble's, whatever place. People Get Ready, the Black-owned bookstore here in New Haven, which I hope you all will be able to patron. But thinking about critical race theory, I am going to shine light on Connecticut and, give us a hand clap for passing that bill, that historic bill, to ensure that we have Black and Latino studies invested in our schools. But, taking the blinders off, who's running the curriculum, right? Like, who is making sure that these things are being taught? What is the metrics that we are utilizing to ensure that our students are getting not only Black history, but the real history, and having these real in-depth conversations on what that might look like. In terms of critical race theory and how that's also showing up in other sectors or factors in our lives, we are currently, once again, bringing it back to voter rights. Most folks think that voter rights is an issue that's only for the South, and like their issues and the transparency that they are undergoing or facing. We're talking about abortion issues that's happening in Texas, which also impacts us, because if folks are not able to have abortions where they choose to be in the South, like Texas and Georgia and Louisiana, they have to now come up to obtain other resources. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't share resources. We are all in one community, but what does that now look like? So I think it's really making sure that, like, yes, critical race theory needs to stay. Critical race theory pushes folks' buttons and makes people have honest conversations and makes people emotional, right? But if we are not able to sit in discomfort, how are we going to be able to move? And really having those one-to-one conversations about how that might look like intergenerationally, how that might look like interracially, how it looks like for Black folks, but making sure that we also are availing space for Black people to take up as much space as possible, and giving them the tools necessary for them to utilize that as well.
And I just want to add quickly that Akia mentioned Connecticut. Connecticut is a state that actually has a lot of data and a lot of statistics on things like the rates at which Black people get pulled over. And Connecticut specifically has a lot of information to help back up the fact that, like, some things are just innately racist, and that systematic racism is a real thing. So we need to also not forget that they have the science. The numbers don't lie. It's in writing. There is proof. And we need to hold people accountable to those things and make sure that we're making sure they affect change based on all this data they wanted to pull, all this research they wanted to do. Like she said, we need to hold people accountable and make sure that they're doing something about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, CRT. I definitely agree with Akia, both of you. But I think my opinion intersects with both of you. I agree. CRT is at a point absolutely right now where it's like, we're not going to change people's minds on it. So we have to make a hard decision right now. We're going to throw it away, or how we're going to change it and manipulate it to make it work for everyone, making it something that's beneficial.
Yeah. Definitely. No, I definitely agree with all of you. And I think that's honestly the perfect wrap up point on this question, Erin, because I think that it's important for us to keep our eyes on the prize, right? And keep our eyes on what the end goal is. And whether we call it critical race theory, just racial justice, whatever we want to call it, at the end of the day, it's about advancing the cause of our people, and getting the resources to people and tearing the system down, quite frankly. So yeah, I think that actually is also a perfect wrap up to our panel. So I just wanted to thank all of our panelists for their amazing answers. I know that I feel like I've learned so much from you all just sitting here today moderating. So I definitely appreciate it, and it's very honored to hear all of your reflections on these. So now I wanted to pass it over to Joelle. But yeah, thank you so much, panelists.
Thank you, Jasmine, for shepherding such an incredible conversation. I think we could have gone much longer. But what we want to do right now is bring in Deacon Miller to sort of respond and react to the conversation that was just held. And so, Jasmine and Deacon Miller, you all take it away.
Well, you're talking about feeling like you're on the spotlight. What a remarkable span of thought. I'm so profoundly impressed with the depth of the understandings. I was particularly impressed with Devana when she reflected that to compare the movements as they were when I was young, when I was your age, and to compare to now is doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is simply because society was profoundly different then. I just very quickly, I remember speaking to a group of young folks, and they were saying, well, if I was around during that time, I would never have allowed or sat in the back of the bus or done any of those things. And the answer to that is yes, you would have, or they'd have killed you. And then to have to confront those things during that time is to recognize there was profound violence, and there weren't any cameras to take pictures of it. And so to do that kind of comparison is difficult. However, it's important because if we consider the many movements of Dr. King, his movement in Albany, Georgia in 1963 was a complete failure. So what the Southern Poverty Law Office and Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and the NAACP did was to scrutinize and see why it went wrong. And the following event worked. So one is to always look at historically what has occurred. And so those are the things that I would say. I know it was mentioned earlier that last year I spoke about, I've often been told that, people are standing on my shoulders. And my response is, get off my shoulders. And the reason is that if you're standing on my shoulders, the only place you're going is where I've been. It is your turn. I am releasing my ownership of what is to be. Maybe I own a part of what was, but I don't own what can be. That's yours. I would hope that there's the understanding to hold on to the good that was done. I mean, if we don't, then it was all done in vain. And as I shared with you yesterday, Jasmine, I went to school with Emmett Till. Mm-hmm. He sat next to my brother in class. I knew his mom, Mrs. Mobley, who was a friend of my mother's. And that kind of pain, that kind of ethereal and eternal pain can never be done in vain. It could never have just disappeared into the ethos. That pain changed America. That one man, that Dr. King, that one young boy, Emmett Till, changed the world. Mm-hmm. And we are now all beneficiaries of an horrid death. The horrid death of Emmett Till began what was then the nascent civil rights movement. And so it is from that point that we look at what has happened. I would tell you this. Some say that things haven't changed much. That we haven't gone very far. Well, we have gone far. Things are not what they used to be. I remember segregation. I saw it. I experienced it. I just believe in the last number of years, the rights of people have been suspended, kind of frozen in time. There are things now happening, a response, I believe, to the presidency of President Obama, that now we see this response, this guttural response to the elevation of how dare a Black man be in that role and that level. and people are pushing back on it. But we can't let it go. I'm 76 years old. Yes, I know I look good for 76, but I'm
Yes, you.
I'm 76 years old, and it's your turn. And what I heard from each of those young people, those accomplished young people, and you included, Jasmine, gives me hope. You know, you're not my future, Jasmine. You're my right now. I need you today.
Yes.
To do all that you can, because you have visions that I just dreamed about.
Definitely. Definitely. No, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. And I know we were talking during the panel saying, obviously we don't know what it was like to be kind of doing this work back with your generation. But I think there always is something to learn from you all. And I think even, like I said, you and I got to connect before this event, and then again right now. But I always feel like when I'm talking to you, I learn so much, and I'm just kind of re-inspired. So while we may not be, you don't want us on your shoulders, we're definitely right there side by side with you. And it's truly an honor and a blessing to do this work alongside with you. So thank you.
I really thank you. And please know I'll be there to back you up.
Thank you.
I mean, I went to jail again just recently, so I'm going to back you up. But
Yes.
you've got this. You've got this.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So I'm gonna pass it back over to Joelle. But thank you so much again, Deacon Miller, for sharing those reflections.
Sure.
Like I said, it's truly just an honor to share this space with you. And we feel energized knowing that we have you and your generation here with us, because that's what it's going to take as we push forward. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Jasmine, Deacon Miller. To all of our panelists, what I would say is just to echo Deacon Miller, you are our right now. You have visions that perhaps Deacon Miller and I as a Gen Xer that we never dreamed of. And so today's moment has been so powerful. If you are not moved to action, if you are not moved to speak your own truth, if you are not moved to invest in this generation that perhaps you have not sat down and had a conversation with after today, I guarantee that you will. It is our responsibility to have this dialogue across generations, to speak truth to power so that we too can live out the legacy of Dr. King and allow for change to come. I thank you all for taking a moment out this morning to be with us, to make this a day on and not a day off. I thank you for being here because you could have been lots of other places. And I hope that you will continue to have this dialogue, continue to share it, and talk with your family members, your colleagues, and friends about our opportunities to move forward together as a community. I'd encourage you to be mindful of other events that are taking place today. There are a number of other programs that are honoring the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King in our communities across the state of Connecticut. So please continue to be engaged, and across the country, I should say. There are many, many of you who are joining us from outside of Connecticut as well. I want to remind you again about dsthartford.com. That is our chapter website. Please be sure to be in touch with us, learn about events that are available that we offer. We also are on Instagram and Facebook as Hartford Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta and DST Hartford. You also can find that donate button on our website. If you go to dsthartford.com and click on MLK Scholarship Breakfast, you too can donate to continue to make an investment of the young people who are not our future, but are our today. We thank again all of our corporate and community sponsors, all of you who have attended from across the world. We thank you for being here. We hope that you take this message with you. I want to thank our committee, the formidable Fortitude 11, who have worked so hard to put this MLK breakfast on. Thank you to our chapter president, all of our chapter leaders, our national and regional leaders for your support. And I also want to thank Rocket Ship Consultants. They are the engine behind this production, and we thank you for your dedicated partnership. At this time, I will invite Deacon Miller to join me, or actually, he will be responsible for closing us out today in benediction. That will be followed by a video tribute as well as a closing video. And so we thank you again for being here today, and we will see you prayerfully in person next year. Deacon Miller?
Thank you, Joelle. Before I begin our benediction, I do want to offer to the Deltas a $500 offering from my wife Sandy and I from our foundation. Oh Lord, oh sweet Jesus, you have blessed us this day with such extraordinary minds. Psalm 139 tells us that we are wonderfully and fearfully made, that you knew us before we were knitted together in our mother's womb, that you formed us and loved us. Help us, precious God, to see you and your magnificent work in one another. Help us to help your children to be raised up so that they might always know that they are wonderfully and beautifully made, that their part of your grand creation is to be the very best that they can be. Lord, we know that you welcomed home your child, Martin. May his joy that he's experiencing right now bring courage to all of us, that we might be the epiphany, the new thoughts, the new beginnings of this planet of yours. Lord, we ask this through your most precious blood, and amen.